Dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, let me start by thanking UNIDO Director General Mr. Li Yong, UAE Minister of Energy and Industry Mr. Suhail Al-Mazroui, and the head of the GMIS Organization Committee Mr. Badr Al-Olama for bringing ITU to this conversation about cybersecurity and safeguarding the future of the manufacturing. If you are working in manufacturing, you have experienced firsthand the disruptions caused by COVID-19 across your supply chains. Social distancing and the new employee safety measures are now the new norm. Like everyone else, you are wondering what this new normal means for the future of your business. The importance of digital technologies and services to economies and societies everywhere. Now, more than ever, we are seeing the power of digital transformation. ITU is at the forefront of this digital revolution and the digital response to COVID-19. I want to take this opportunity to pay tribute to all those within our membership and beyond who have been working hard to help us ensure communities remain connected and lives are saved. One of the unintended effects of COVID-19 has been a massive spike in cybercrime. Manufacturing is on the front line. Micro, small, and medium enterprises are particularly vulnerable. This begs the question, is the future of manufacturing at risk? And how can we all work together to safeguard from cybersecurity attacks? The first thing to remember is that the cybersecurity defenses, technical, procedural, and administrative. We at ITU believe that in addition to regulations, voluntary standards are an important tool to support reliable and predictable management of risk. If we want efforts can be an effective avenue to achieve that. Equally important is the need for all industries and public sector bodies to develop a culture of cybersecurity awareness. Standards bodies such as ITU have a significant role to play in progressing international consensus on issues related to cybersecurity. IT's work evolves in tune with the evolution of the ICT industry. That is why we are addressing network and the security aspects of quantum information technologies and have launched a new ITU focus group on quantum information technology for networks. The group is expected to make a key contribution to the coordination of ongoing and future standardization projects across a range of standard bodies. The COVID-19 crisis calls for solidarity across countries, governments, and all sectors. ITU has long facilitated global dialogue on cybersecurity issues, be it through the World Summit on the Information Society Action Line C5 or the Global Cybersecurity Agenda Framework GCA. ITU's Global Cybersecurity Index sheds light on our member states' commitment to cybersecurity at a global level. I'm more confident than ever in ITU's capacity to serve as a neutral global platform where all stakeholders inside and outside manufacturing can forge a coordinated global approach to cybersecurity. I know many of you are wondering about the global development of 5G networks, which will be critical infrastructure for the next wave of manufacturing innovation and an accelerator towards the achievement of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The recent IT World Radio Communication Conference 2019 assigned spectrum to IMT 2020. And these measures will facilitate further development of 5G mobile networks worldwide. Their claims linking 5G technologies and the spread of COVID-19, let me be clear. Viruses cannot travel on radio waves and mobile networks. These claims have no scientific basis whatsoever, and ITU condemns the attacks on infrastructure vital to address the pandemic and keep our economies and societies working. New technologies such as 5G, artificial intelligence, robotics, Internet of Things, and many others have the power to transform the industrial and manufacturing landscape on an unprecedented scale. These technologies are creating new possibilities and new challenges, including new data privacy and cybersecurity concerns. We are at a crossroads. Too many lives are still to COVID-19. Too many individuals and businesses are reeling from this crisis. And yet, way too many people around the world remain unconnected. Digital is the new normal for individuals, governments, and businesses around the world. As I told the extraordinary G20 ministerial meeting just a few weeks ago, we must seize this opportunity to speed up the development of digital society and bring digital technologies and services to everyone, everywhere. At that meeting, I highlighted, as I mentioned at the previous G20 health minister meeting, we have to support SMEs. We have to engage them to develop new applications, new solutions. And SMEs has a huge source of innovation. So we have to work with them. ITU is committed to safeguarding the future of the manufacturing industry. My hope is that discussions like today's will further our goal of adopting a collaborative, multi-stakeholder approach to deal with cybersecurity issues, including in manufacturing. It is at times like this that we need to ensure that our systems and networks are secure. So dear friends, you may know that ITU is a UN special agency, but ITU is somewhat different from the others, that we do not only have government as our members, but we also have around 900 industry. The 60 academies as our academy members. So I'd like to take this opportunity to invite you to join ITU, to join our world efforts to develop new technologies and to contribute your innovations to our mainstream. I highlight 4 I's. Inclusiveness. So infrastructure, because we still have half population not connected yet, because we still needed to advance our infrastructure advantages, to bring new technologies, new services. So we have a lot of work to do. And investment is key. If we do not have good investment, nothing can happen. And unfortunately, there's some misperception that ICT infrastructure should be left. That is not 100% correct. Although today the ICT infrastructure is mainly invested by private sector, but we need to create a good environment to encourage investment here. And then we talked about innovation, and innovation is not rely in the big kind. It could come from small, medium-sized enterprises, and particularly from those startups. And they know technologies, they know the solutions, and I think that we really have to strengthen our cooperation with MSMEs. And finally, inclusiveness. Inclusiveness means we should not leave anybody behind. So, my dear friends, let me close my short remarks and wish you a successful meeting. And of course, we'd like to see you in IT activities. And we also wish you big success in your own efforts. Thank you very much.
Hello everyone, welcome to the GMIS digital series. This session is Cybersecurity in a Remote World, Safeguarding the Future of Manufacturing. I'm Declan Curry. I've been a journalist and a broadcaster of more than 30 years experience, and I'm delighted that I'm moderating this discussion. Our speakers are Deneen DeFiore, Vice President and Chief Information Security Officer at United Airlines, Justin John, Executive Technology Director at GE, Emilian Papadopoulos, who's president of Good Harbour Security Risk Management, and Ray Walshe of Dublin City University and Technology Standards Leader for the EC, the World Economic Forum. DeFiore, let's start with you, with your perspective from United Airlines. Under coronavirus, we're seeing a lot of more people working from home or working remotely. As someone who thinks about cybersecurity, what challenges does that throw up?
Sure. So it definitely poses a lot of different challenges. Most companies, and United Airlines included, shifted from a mainly in the office workforce, so on-premise workforce, to a truly almost 100% remote workforce. So threats perspective, a lot of things that you didn't really think about, you had to now be cognizant and aware of. Everything from, of course, standing up remote infrastructure, VPN solutions to make sure that they're secure. Of a everybody's home network, everybody's PC. So you have to change your thinking about your cybersecurity program and the way you approach threat management in a different light. The other thing I would think that an awareness piece of employees. When you're in a remote working situation, there's a lot of just capabilities that employees take for granted. For example, printing. I have to print a document to do my job. How do you do that securely without maybe compromising IP when you have to do it on a home printer, when you're scanning an application, signing it on your home printer? It's maybe a cloud application. Now you have a company's information and IP in some application that isn't secure or licensed, and there's a lot of risks that go with that. So making sure that your employees can understand how to do their job securely and offering them information that enables them to do their job, so they don't have to figure it out themselves and inadvertently put your company at risk or themselves at risk, really, in doing that. So lots of different things to think about. And I would say it's not the when you think about it's not the big, huge cybersecurity issues. It's those little kind of back to basic things that you really have to go through the checklist and manage.
Thank you. And Ray Walshe, what this actually highlights is, as for so much of cybersecurity, it's the human factors that matter.
Absolutely. I mean, thanks, Declan. And as Deneen said, cybersecurity has become front and central to everybody, whether it's from a social perspective, whether it's business perspective. COVID-19 has effectively changed our lives. I mean, we wouldn't be doing what we're currently doing today, which is having this virtual meeting, if we haven't had the pandemic. And it affects everything from, as you said, the way we do our business, our social lives, how we interact with each other now. And end-to-end security is something that not everybody deals with, and is top of their game, in terms of addressing it, to do if you're an SME or have access to the office environment, then think. And as you said, Declan, the personal security around the location,
building that we think is secure anymore, then how do we make it as secure when we are in remote locations?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you asked about challenges. One of the great opportunities of this situation is that we can kind of do away with the myth that just because we were in a bunch of facilities and building security around them, that we were actually secure and the data that we wanted to protect was staying within those facilities. Work as a security model, defense in depth, which was the next era, kind of worked, but was extremely expensive and cumbersome, challenging for CISOs to operate, and imposed restrictions on the CIO. And we were moving towards a world of zero trust. I think accelerated by what CISOs and CIOs around the world have had to do because of coronavirus. So that's a good thing. I will just add, you asked about challenges. I think Deneen outlined them perfectly from a kind of right now is money. A lot of businesses, a lot of manufacturing businesses and others are hit very hard by coronavirus. Cybersecurity might actually not be top of mind for a CEO. Keeping the business running is top of mind for the CEO. So crazy as it seems right now, you can imagine a CEO actually going to a CISO and saying, we need to cut your budget. We need you to trim back. We're all cutting back a bit. And I think that's a major challenge at the same time that we're piling more work onto CISOs, like Deneen described. And so I think CISOs need to be ready to assert their case and adjusting to this new world. Second of all, the attackers are still coming at us. They didn't stay at home and stop working. And third of all, coronavirus has just taught us that black swan events happen, and all those really bad high consequence events that CISOs like to warn CEOs about can happen. Now is not a time to be constraining the purse strings for the CISO. We need to actually invest more in security right now.
So, Emilian, the concern is that companies may try to do cybersecurity and it cannot be done cheaply. This needs to be invested in.
That's right.
Deneen.
I was just going to add on, I think, whether you're a CISO or if you're in industrial security, you're seeing the threat activity increase. I mean, by 1,000% increase month over month. So the whether it's whatever attack, if it's phishing, they're taking advantage of folks, the need for information, right? And then, as Emilian stated, maybe a company's risk trade-off, the lax in security posture to keep their business up and running, and the quick, I need to get operational, so I'll maybe make a trade-off right now to take advantage of those vulnerabilities. They're definitely, the data shows the increase in cybersecurity threats. So, it's not the time to compromise, and it's not the time to cut the budgets. It's actually the time to double down and make sure that you are closing the gaps, and maybe not making millions of dollars of significant investments, but there's lots of things you can do to, like I said, get back to basics and shore up what you need to do to close up the vulnerabilities and heighten your posture a little bit.
Let me just bring Justin Don into the discussion. We've not heard from him yet, from GE, from General Electric. Justin, put this in some sort of broader time frame for us, considering that before coronavirus, manufacturers were already moving towards much more remote working. When you look at the standards that we have now, when you look at the requirements for data management, for privacy requirements, are they up to the job?
Yeah, so I think from a standards perspective, there's kind of two sides to that coin. There's a number of standards that are out there, but maybe lack, regulatory teeth. So, they actually lay out a really good plan of how you should comply, but there's nothing that's enforceable about them. So one of the things that we have to do is to really push our customers forward is, hey, how do we actually get enforcement teeth behind some of these standards so that more people comply with the standards? And then there's actually, the side of new technology. One of the big breakthroughs is really additive manufacturing. Right? When you think about additive manufacturing, which has the potential to change the way we do manufacturing, it's all about digital, right? All of the OEM's intellectual property is embedded in a build file. So when you think about that from a cybersecurity challenge, it's a massive new field that standards don't really address today. If you're the OEM, you have to actually send this digital file all across the world to a printer that can be located anywhere. And if you're the person printing it, how can you trust the integrity of that file? How do you know the part that you're printing is actually, what the OEM intended? And if you're the OEM, how do you make sure only the exact person you want is printing that piece of hardware and the amount that they paid for, right? So it's not just you're losing IP, you want to make sure you're getting paid for what they're printing. So I think this opens up a whole new kind of world for standards that we need to address as additive scales.
Thank you. Ray Walshe.
Yeah, I mean, standards have come to the fore, and it's not just. I mean, IP, just as Justin has said, is extremely important. A lot of research budget goes into generating it, and that is data at the end of the day. And data has become, as people have been saying, it's the new oil, it's the new gold, etc. And it's definitely needs to be protected. And one of the things I think that data, and is in the context of the pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic, has given us an acceleration of digital transformation. It has changed the way we look at things. It has made people more cybersecurity aware and more data aware, their own personal data, as well as in the context of the manufacturing data, as Justin has said. So the concept of GDPR and personal identification, personal identifiable information, PII, and personal identification factors, a risk awareness associated with your personal information, that has become more and more important. So I think the digital transformation has definitely accelerated, and it's not. I mean, pandemic is not a good situation to be in, but the byproduct in terms of the ICT uptake and the security uptake within industry is applaudable, I think, at this stage.
And Emilian, this comes back to your point that this is just too important for economies, for savings. Cybersecurity is the heart of the business's viability in the future.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And the acceleration of digital transformation, and then some of the things that Justin was talking about, point out what I think is an important answer to your question about regulations and standards. One of my favorite sentences in any regulation or standard out there was from the New York State Department of Financial Services. And they simply said that an executive of a company must sign off that the company has done a risk assessment, that it was adequate, and that they're taking measures. And oh, by the way, it mentioned they have to think about their supply chain as well. So if you think about what Justin said, additive manufacturing, hugely important new area. Regulators are going to take a while to catch up and write specific regulations about additive manufacturing. Don't expect that anytime soon. But the executives in Justin's company and others, they know how important that is to the business. They can do the work to understand the digital supply chain behind it, and then where it's going downstream from them to customers, and then decide what's important and what risk needs to be managed. So I think it all ties together. We've had digital transformation. We've had a realization that our supply chains are digital and complex and more important than we maybe thought they were. And so regulation needs to be flexible and kind of count on executives to do that work and figure that out.
Justin, John, just a thought from you, then I'll hear from Ray Walshe.
Yeah, I just want to build on what Emilian is saying around supply chains. One thing our customers are very concerned about is when equipment shows up, how do they know it's exactly as the manufacturer built it? And this trusted supply chain is becoming a paramount issue today. And this is, how do you have integrity and trust throughout the whole chain of custody? And again, there's technologies out there that exist like TPMs and HSMs, but the question is, hey, when the manufacturer builds a piece of technology, how can I, as a consumer, as a customer, easily validate that what I received is that? And it's something that doesn't create a lot of burden, right? Because the last thing we need is a delay in commissioning due to cybersecurity, and nobody wants that, right? And that's what actually inhibits, you know, people from adopting this type of technology. So that supply chain from a manufacturing perspective is becoming a paramount issue.
The whole ecosystem that we're living in has changed. Manufacturing is not just production and fabrication. Some people think that the industry is purely fabrication, or it's sort of hammer and anvil type old school work. I mean, it's highly skilled, highly technical now with state of the art, cloud-based, data-oriented manufacturing, and that's the emerging technologies are highly embedded in the manufacturing industry now, and standards give you that interoperability. I mean, when you have people who are geographically dispersed, and you're going across international boundaries, you're conducting international trade. Standardization, regulation, which is built on standards, certification, which is built on standards, legislation, which is built on standards. Standards is the root for this, the glue that holds a lot of these ecosystems together. So it can't emphasize enough how important that standardization process is.
Thank you. Deneen.
No, I think, you know, from a supply chain and manufacturing perspective, as well as I'll say maintenance, repair and overhaul, right? It's really important to look at, as Ray said, the entire ecosystem. You're only as secure, right, as that entire ecosystem. And in, you know, aerospace and defense, the sector that I play in now, and I played a large part of my whole entire career in, that's huge. Our assets are big, they're mobile, and they cross international boundaries. So for us, cybersecurity is paramount, and to have standards that are enforceable and kind of normalized across, I'll say, the regulators. So they're not, you know, different. You know, if you're in the EU or in the US or wherever, it needs to be able to be easily implemented by, I'll say, you know, in my world, the operators, right? So if you get equipment from an OEM, a spare part or whatever, and you're in a repair shop and you're, you know, repairing an engine or doing an overhaul or whatever, the cybersecurity pieces of that to get an asset back in operation or certified as airworthy in my case, they need to be easily implemented by the operator, and then kind of harmonized and standardized across the globe. So that's something that we're definitely working on in the aviation industry across. It's a very, I'll say, ecosystem view, and that's definitely, I think, you know, has to apply not only in the aviation industry but across many other industries as well too.
Okay, thank you. We'll talk a little bit more about multi-stakeholder collaboration in a moment or two, but I just want to get some thoughts from you on the use and the utility of emerging safety technologies, such as mobile apps, wearables, PPE that's tracking with embedded sensors. How useful are they? What's the importance of those in building an intelligent industrial safety management within manufacturing?
Hey, Declan,
right. Oh, sorry, Justin, then right.
Yeah. Hey, you know, this is interesting, especially in the context of COVID-19. And as you move towards, you know, manufacturing or any type of environment where there's less people, companies need to know if their employees are safe, right? And typically, you know, that's done in a lot of environments just by visual sight, right? If there's more folks that are remote, how do you do this? So embedding vital sensors into your PPE becomes more and more important. Not only that, it actually gives you a lot of situational awareness, right? There are sensors out there today that can tell you if you're close to hazardous gas or you're close to high voltage electricity. Being able to take that along with where your position is, right? And if you think about manufacturing, if you think about the industrial environments, they're most of the time GPS denied. Right, so how do you do positioning indoors along with health, along with situational awareness, and then feed that all the way back to a remote center so that, you know, the company can actually know where there's an issue and dispatch help. So that, to me, is going to be accelerated as we try to do more and more remote workers. At the same time, we have to protect all that personal data, right? There's a lot of personally identifiable information in that. So this is kind of a revolution in terms of giving employees more situational awareness and addressing liability at the same time.
Thank you. Ray Walsh.
Actually, that's an interesting one, Justin, just when you mentioned about the trying to do location internally within a manufacturing environment, whether it's tracking product or components or individuals. There's an Irish company, I'll give you a specific use case, who have developed a new wireless technology based on IEEE's 802.11 technology, which allows you to do location down to the centimeter internally. So it's 10 times more sensitive to location than GPS. And that's something that will, in partnership with the sensors that you mentioned, like the RFIDs, the near field communications technologies, this is going to leave tracking and supply chain logistics a lot easier to control in terms of location-based information, but a lot more difficult to control in terms of the amount of data that's going to be generated because of all of these points that are going to be on the network.
Thank you. Emilian.
I think those are great answers to the question about use cases and how we kind of weave this into the industry. I will also point out two other things we've got to keep an eye on as we bring all these technologies on board. One is privacy. As humans, we like privacy. I think a lot of a nurse, I imagine, would want PPE that warns them when they've been in contact with something dangerous. But will an employee want to be embedded with a chip that monitors their health to this great degree to determine their performance, so on and so forth? There's a spectrum here, and we need to think about employees, think about humans, and to Deneen's point about global, this is going to look very different in different countries because we have a different sense of privacy. So I just didn't want to let this discussion go entirely without pointing out that there is a privacy trade-off to think about here. The other thing is that a lot of these technologies will increasingly depend on AI or ML, which can be artificial intelligence or machine learning, which can be very powerful, but they can also be a bit of a black box. Even the designers of these technologies don't always understand how they work and how they're making the decisions they make. That has obvious potential negative consequences, and it has also non-obvious consequences. One of those is around the diversity of who is writing artificial intelligence and machine learning for different software written by and tested on one race doesn't work so well on another race. We know that now. So I think as we talk about the wearables, the sensors, the Internet of everything, and connecting it to humans, we need to be really careful about privacy, about diversity in populations, and thinking about these unintended consequences as well.
Thank you. Ray Walsh.
Privacy is perfect, like as an example there, Emilian. That's an excellent lead in to something I was just going to say about the standards related aspect of that, because I mean I sit on the AI committee, like the ISO IEC Joint Technical Committee for Artificial Intelligence, and I'm drafting standards for them. And privacy, trustworthiness, bias in AI systems are all key things that keep coming up over and over again, and it's up to it and imperative that standards bodies, standards development organizations and standards setting organizations get those standards and the awareness about the standards that are in development out there as quick as possible, and to try and fast track the development, because for the larger bodies, the international bodies like ISO, which everybody is aware of, and IEC and ITU, sometimes because you're dealing with national bodies, you have to back agreement, because standards are best practice agreed all over the world that this is the way to do things, to get things to communicate together, for them to be safe, to be trustworthy, to remove gender issues or bias issues from the services and processes and technologies. And the way to do that is by lobbying national bodies. And when you've got 40 nations all communicating together, it takes a while for that process to happen. It can sometimes take years. Open standards tend to be a bit quicker, a bit more lightweight, but it's a way of there's a happy medium between the open standards and the formal standardization processes by the larger international organizations.
Thank you. Deneen, I wonder, is there an issue of cost here? We have you with United Airlines, a major successful company globally. Justin is from GE, which again, is one of the great manufacturers of the world. Of course, you're talking about using technologies like this, but a smaller manufacturing company in a supply chain in less well-off parts of the world, is this even on their agenda?
I think cost is always an issue, and as cost is particularly in the transportation and hospitality industries right now, everyone is hurting badly. So we're watching our cost position very, very closely, but we still are trying to figure out from a PPE, health and safety concerns, how do we use technology to enable that health and safety for our employees and for our customers as well too, because that is going to ultimately lead to either reputation, brand reputation and success in the longer term, and then also the well-being and of course the health and safety of our employees and customers. Things like the thermal camera with people, employees and customers, health and safe, healthy and safe, we're going to have to do that. And technology probably in the end is going to cost us less to do that. And we're exploring those options, and I think other companies are going to have to do that. And I think technology companies are getting on board, and they're working with a lot of folks to do that. So, I wouldn't say at zero cost, but people are doing this in out of the everybody's got to make money, of course. But is the way the world needs to work now, and then we'll figure out that model later. I've seen so far.
But very well, just on that point and building on it, are we looking at these technologies as great enabling technologies that build inclusive growth, or are they a future source of further inequality, further division between wealthy parts of the world and less wealthy parts?
Well, we're talking about highly technical areas. So this is the I suppose ecosystem where we're dealing with the next generation products and services. And like everything else, I mean, it really is the technology is not biased in one way or the other, but it can be used in multiple ways. It can be for like say, you can say for good or for evil. I won't say as Deneen as requested and call it this new normal that we find it, but our changed reality means that we have to deal with these things in a situation where we're pushing the boundaries all the time. The acceleration in terms of the technological development is mind-boggling sometimes, and we're really struggling to keep a pace in terms of this evolution of the ecosystems of cloud and big AI, and trying to keep a handle on that in relation to the manufacturing industry and the cybersecurity aspect of the manufacturing industry. And it's not an easy thing to do. People have to be vigilant in terms of preparedness, and one of the big things is training, is to upskill our employees, to make them aware of what the issues are, that what can go wrong, and it's not a case, and Deneen made reference to this earlier, that the workforce actually needs to be helped in this new environment, and not wait for something bad to happen and then point the finger and say, oops, you shouldn't have done that or whatever. Like, the systems should be developed in such a way that they are user-friendly, they are smart and intelligent, they are unbiased, and they provide the level of protection that the customer or the citizen deserves.
Justin, John, this is where collaboration becomes enormously important. The setting of standards so that there is a benchmark, and then industry working along the supply chain and with government to ensure that the best know-how is developed and also adopted in global value supply chains.
Yeah, absolutely. An interesting partnership, which I personally witnessed over the last few years, is a partnership between government, call it academia, national labs, and industry, right, in the world of cybersecurity. But again, cybersecurity is unique. It's constantly evolving. Hackers are getting better at a very rapid pace. So we can't have technology be stagnant. And why this partnership matters is, national labs and academia, they're constantly doing groundbreaking research into the latest AI, latest machine learning, latest techniques to combat cybersecurity. You need industry to actually make it real, get it out to a customer, give you the real data and the real application. And then you need the government to actually tell you what's the real threat vector, right? What are the actual attacks that are going on at the nation state level? You combine all these together and now you can keep pace with what the hackers are doing. And then the goal of the government is to get that technology out to the customers, right? It doesn't matter where in the world, they just want to raise the level of cybersecurity, across the globe. So it's really kind of a win-win for everyone on the defense side of cybersecurity.
But Justin, just to develop this point with you, this is where we sometimes see tensions, because government will decide what is the best national security approach for an individual nation, whereas major global multinational companies such as yours are looking across a range of different nations. Is there a conflict there between the government's national focus and a more global approach that not just supports businesses such as yours, but also encourages the global spread and development of know-how?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say when you look at specifically cybersecurity, what they are doing in the R&D space, the government views success in a program when it actually goes out in the field and is deployed as a product that customers can buy anywhere in the world. Right? They have the right to restrict it, and they don't. Right? So their view, specifically on cybersecurity, is that it actually everyone benefits and everyone's cybersecurity defense goes up. That being said, right, the government can do, behind closed doors, classified space, their own work. But when we talk about this global partnership between academia, universities, national labs, industry, I haven't seen those restrictions in terms of deploying that technology out.
Thank
you. If you do it at national level, and what happens, including in the development of standards for cybersecurity, is that the biggest organizations that are handling it at the moment in terms of standardization is ISO and IEC, like the International Standards Organization and the Industrial Electrotechnical Council. They are a commission where they are actively pursuing a joint technical committee agenda through their Standards Committee 27, which is on cybersecurity. And when that international standard gets adopted, that will become a European standard. In other words, it will be adopted by Sensenlec and ETSI, which are two European Commission recognized standards development organizations. And as soon as that happens, then all national bodies who are members of the European Union will adopt that as a national standard, that cybersecurity standard. And then the government uses that mechanisms of regulating, certification, legislating for cybersecurity issues. So the best way to do it, which allows for international trade, where you are a multinational company trading across multiple borders, multiple jurisdictions, multiple cultures, is through international standardization.
Thank you. Emilian.
I don't have a lot to disagree with there. I will add one other area where I think government can play an absolutely critical role. And it ties back to a couple of pieces that Deneen and Justin have talked about. and it is look at systemic risk and systemic risk across the supply chain. You heard Deneen talk about customer confidence, right? The customer needs to have confidence in the safety and security of the entire experience. You heard Justin talk about integrity and trust across the value chain. Each company is best positioned to do that for itself. What government can do is look at critical nodes that could affect not just one company at a time, but dozens of companies or entire industries at a time. So if you look at cloud is the easy example. What does happen if AWS goes down? AWS East goes down for 3 days, 4 days. Which critical companies suffer? If you look at fiber optic cables, which sometimes they get cut and countries in the Middle East can lose 60% of their internet with one fiber optic cable getting cut. You look at GPS came up earlier. Other parts of digital critical infrastructure that especially for small companies are basically invisible things we depend on. Government, I think, has a role to look at that systemic risk and say, it's not any one company's job to go fix that, but if it goes wrong, the nation suffers, the international community suffers, and therefore it is government's role to go and look at those problems.
Thank you. Deneen, the sense we're getting from this is that the companies need to think outside of their of the silos in which they usually operate. If you're running a company, particularly at times like this, your focus is on best shareholder return for your own investors and continuing the viability of the company itself. This suggests a more collaborative approach involving companies and government is essential.
Yes, I agree. And I think one particular component, I think, in particular in the aviation industry, is the concept around safety and security is we don't compete on that. And cybersecurity is kind of within that, it's in that same paradigm, right? So the approach around how we keep the ecosystem safe, how we keep the ecosystem secure, what standards we approach that. Everyone comes together and we really work towards what's the best solution for everyone. So that is the one thing that I think is very, very, I think it's unique actually. And I love being part of that because you can get things done and you get things done the right way and drive the right outcomes because it is about the outcome. It's about the security. It is about safety. It is about the well-being of, of keeping the ecosystem secure and safe. So definitely, I see your point. I have I'll say the luxury of being in an industry which the paradigm is maybe a little bit different than some of the others.
Yes, the airline industry, the aviation industry has a long history in being great sort of commercial competitors, but also having a global approach to issues such as safety. Emilian.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I think aviation, I think Deneen used the right word, is unique in that respect. Other industries are maybe beginning to learn from that, which is good. A few years ago, the Defense Department made a broad announcement that it was changing how it evaluates bids across all contracts. It used to evaluate based on quality, cost, and schedule. And they said, we now have a fourth pillar. It's security. And by the way, we're not going to pay any extra for it. You've just got to deliver for it. And so baking that into the kind of bone marrow of the industry, that it is a requirement, it must be that way, I think is a very positive development. Aviation does this to 5 nines of reliability. Most sectors don't, but they should move in that direction.
Thank you. I'm just going to get some final and brief thoughts from each of you addressing our initial question once again. Cybersecurity in a remote world, safeguarding the future of manufacturing. Action this day. What needs to be done? Ray.
Well, right now we need national policy in regard to this. I mean, at the national level, we have strategy committees that come in and they look at your data strategies, your AI strategies. There needs to be a national cybersecurity strategy as well at a government level. Similarly, we have European legislation and European strategies on AI and data, and you need European cybersecurity strategies as well. So it's about, and Deneen and Emilian and Justin referred to them, we actually have the coalition of the willing here. The companies are interested in this greater good in relation to safety, and cybersecurity is part of that. And they will come together and advise on government strategy quite willingly.
Okay, thank you. Brief solutions, brief calls to action, Deneen.
I think one of the things that we definitely need to do is reassess the cybersecurity frameworks, and I'll say even regulatory approaches to align with these new remote working risks, right? So threatened risks that we see. And then also the dependencies on and assumptions that we have made in the old paradigm, right? We had a lot of, I think, dependencies on the combination of physical and logical controls, and those don't exist anymore. So when you think about, okay, am I compliant with my GDPR physical protection and PCI physical, that's not relevant anymore. So we have to go back and reassess kind of our cybersecurity framework and what good looks like, and say, okay, this is how we're going to do things now. This is what good looks like now, and just everybody come to agreement to say this is how we're gonna be safe and secure in going forward. So I think we need to do that sooner than later.
Thank you very much, Justin. John, your key takeaway.
You know, I think going back to what Ray was saying around standards, there's a lot of great standards out there already. We need to drive adoption at a much faster rate, and that may mean putting more regulatory teeth behind some of these standards, but it's getting them adopted right now by customers, and then making sure the new standards keep up with the pace of technology development and the attack vectors, right? They're not slowing down and waiting for standards, right? So how do we make it faster, both in adoption and the development of new standards is an area we should focus.
Thank you. And Emilian, a final thought from you.
I'll be contrarian by not talking about standards. We know from COVID-19 that black swan events happen. We know that the manufacturing industry has been through massive digital transformation, and that can create within enterprises blind spots about digital dependencies and digital risk. So the action that I would love to see across all companies, not just the big sophisticated ones, is that the Chief Information Security Officer, the CEO, CTO, the business unit leaders get together in a room, figure out in their transformed business, what are those big digital risks and what's the worst thing that could happen. There's no standard that's going to tell them what that is. They have to know their own business and figure it out, and then go tackle those high consequence scenarios.
Emilian, Papadopoulos, Deneen, DeFiore, Ray Walshe, and Justin John, thank you very much for such a vigorous and enlightening discussion. I'm Declan Curry. I want to thank you for watching this GMIS digital series.
Thank you.
Thank you.